Jenny is amazing at like really taking on board things that I share, and she stitches with my videos and asks me questions, and Jenny is also in my membership as well, and I just thought, how wonderful would it be to bring this conversation to the masses and bring this conversation live together and like chat about all things authenticity and alignment, which is what Jenny is all about. Let's bring this conversation live for the purpose of helping everyone. So do you want to just do a little bit of an introduction, Jenny, so everyone can get to know you, and then we can just see where the conversation goes from there?
Yes, absolutely. So I am Jenny. I am an AUDHDer. I am an AUDHD self-love coach, and in the last 2 years I have found out about my neurodiversity, and on that journey found that actually it was a really overwhelming and lonely place to be, and out about my neurodiversity, and on that journey found that actually it was a really overwhelming and lonely place to be. I've been spiritual throughout my life, on and off, and finding out about my neurodiversity and something coming back in home, if you like, with my spiritualness came hand in hand together. And so that is sort of where I've ended up today as this person 2 years on from a neurodiversity diagnosis. But prior to that, in what feels a bit like a previous life, I was a secondary school teacher for 16 years. That was my career, and I was very pastorally minded in that job, and it's always been a big part of my nature to want the best for people and to want to really care for people and help people learn how to care for themselves. So I've moved out of the classroom and not away from music. Music was my subject, but in terms of my teaching now and my guidance, it's much more pastoral based. It's much more helping people to understand who they are with this new neurodivergent identity, and actually that their authenticity and acceptance comes from within, and once that's solid and in place, then other magical things can happen, and connections with other people and just general positivity that can be built into people's lives happens from that point on.
I love that, Jenny. And I've changed the view to make you large on my screen. I'm wondering if we could do like a side by side, but I can't figure out how to do it. But anyway, it'll be fine. So yeah, I really resonate with your story, Jenny. I love that what you said, that, you know, it comes from inside first, that self-acceptance, validation, like all of that comes from inside first and then can ripple out. And I love that you have a background in teaching and music as well. I think that's, you know, beautiful. And you have a lovely singing voice as well, which I've heard. So, so I'm wondering if I can make us sort of side by side. I'm not sure how to do that.
Yeah, I wonder if there's settings somewhere that we can do that.
I think all I can do is like, oh, my face has gone huge. I don't know. My face suddenly like zoomed right in. And I don't know if we can.
I'm happy being down here. I'm grand.
Well, I tell you what, we can keep swapping over. That's fine.
That's fine.
I actually did. I did a live with a friend of mine, John Binney, and he was in the box as well. And I said, "Oh, there's Mini Binney in a box," and he wrote a song about it, which was like, Mini Binney in a box.
And to be so creative, that must be amazing.
Oh, so what should we get started on, Jenny? Do you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask me, and then we can kind of share and just chat with the audience?
I do have questions. I have actually written some questions that came to me just before we started this session. So the first thing that I want to ask you is, in general terms, so not about you specifically, but just for everybody out there that is watching, what does it mean to be your authentic self? What does that actually practically look like in life?
Oh, that's a good question. By the way, I don't know any of the questions that Jenny's asked. Okay, what does it mean? So I feel there's many layers to this answer. Ultimately, I feel it is about who you are at a soul level. So aside from some of your life experience does form who you authentically are. but also that can form conditioning. So it's like, aside from your conditioning, your behaviors, your belief patterns, it's who you are at a soul level, and it is who you were brought to this planet to be. I believe everyone is here like with their divine mission, their purpose, like the reason that they're here on this planet, like with their gifts. And that is what I believe your authentic self is. Once those layers have been stripped away, it is like who you are on that soul level. And then the more like human side of that is like, what are your strengths? What are you naturally good at? What are your gifts? And what are the things that you have been through and you have transformed in your life that you're then here to help others with? It's kind of like your mission and purpose ties into that as well. What do you think it is, Jenny? I'm going to ask you that one back.
No, I like that actually. And what you were saying there about sort of what you've been through then almost defines your mission and purpose. That really resonates with what I was saying about what I do now in terms of my lived experience and my wanting to support others. My whole business started when I was off work with burnout from being a teacher, and I knew that being a teacher in this country at the moment is an extremely difficult and challenging and overwhelming job. And I knew there were so many of us out there that were feeling the pressure of that at the heart of it, we just want to teach the kids and do good in the world. And there was so much else that was getting in the way of it. And I wanted to be able to support other people before they got to the point that I was in. And that's kind of morphed now, the more that I have learned about who I am as a person, and now that's developed into who I want to support going forward. So that does make complete sense. And you know, that people say in terms of who you want to be and how you want to support people in the world, it's got to be something that you feel passionate about, that you resonate with. And the core place that comes from, I think, is our own lived experience, isn't it? So many people out there that are coaches or that help people in some way or another, it comes from that inner place of somewhere that they've been that they want to support others to either get out of or not ever experience in the first place.
I love that. And that resonates for me in my story as well. Like, I spent 15 years in corporate and it really broke me, and I wasn't my full authentic self. So yeah, similar for me. Like, my passion is to like help people set up soul aligned businesses. Because I've been there, I felt the pain of that. You know, can't totally be your authentic self. You know, there's still a matrix structure, isn't there, within whatever kind of organization that you exist within. Ultimately, at the root of that is like a bunch of human beings who like all ultimately want to be their best selves. But then there's like all these kind of layers of like matrix over it that are like actually preventing that. So yeah, it's like that soul aligned place to be able to take that leap into that authenticity, whatever that means for you.
That leads me nicely into my next question, actually, which you've touched a little bit on there, and that is, why do so many people struggle to show up as authentic with themselves, or to understand who they are or what their authenticity is?
Great question. So I'm just going to answer this one intuitively, and this is also based on my experience of working with clients as well. So firstly, it is those conditionings and beliefs that we pick up through our lives. And for those of us that are sensitive and empathic, we tend to have a lot more of those beliefs, especially in childhood, like up to the ages of like 0 to 7 is like a really, really key time where these get formed. And these are beliefs like we must listen to others' opinions over our own. You know, we are not the authority. A big piece of my work is like, you are the authority. And this also happens energetically as well. So things happen where we feel like on some level it is actually safer for us to like manage the emotions of our family and those around us to keep us safe, because it literally kept us safe. So we then develop these beliefs that we are not the authority, that we shouldn't listen to ourselves. And that we can't be our authentic selves. And we might have been told, like, how many of us are told, like, good girls don't get angry, like, you know, you're young, you're having that tantrum, like, that is not how good girls behave. And we pick up all of these beliefs and we pick up this energy. I know certainly for me, I actually, one of the reasons I wasn't being my authentic self was because when I was 8, I actually saved my family from being psychic. And like no one ever spoke about that again. So I took that on board as firstly, I have to be hypervigilant and look out for my family. So I have to be super attuned to what's going on in my environment. And B, like no one spoke about it again. So it was like, oh, is being psychic not okay? It's like having those gifts and that weird sensory experience that I had in that moment, that's not okay. So I feel like it's that combination of those beliefs and those experiences that we have, where we are navigating away from our authority. I mean, we're born in authority, right? We wake up, we're born, we cry, we ask for food, we ask for milk, we sleep when we want to sleep. Like we're born as the authority, but we then lose that ability to tune into that inner voice as we go on, and we have to kind of build that back up again. So that's why I feel we come away from a long answer. Sorry, Jenny.
No, it's a great answer. Great. I mean, it's right what you're saying in terms of the conditioning we pick up from other people. So much of the work that you have done yourself as a coach and that I do with people too is working on those limiting beliefs. You know, when people believe things about themselves, I can't do this, I'm not capable of that, or I'll never be XYZ. And when you really pick into that, why not? Where does that come from? Who told you that? Mm-hmm. And actually, what evidence have you got that that's true? What evidence have you got to the contrary? And it really is, it's that light bulb moment of coaching and being with people when actually they realise, hold on a minute, that's just a story I'm telling myself, and I have been repeating to myself over and over again. And when people realise that and have that moment of, I can change the story. Okay, it might not happen overnight, but you know, working on people's self-belief and seeing those transformations is incredible. It really is. It's magic.
Love that. And I've actually got like a metaphor for that right now. I've been working on my laptop today, and in front of me I have got my wireless mouse. Yeah. And I literally, just when I went to change the view, I just picked up my wireless mouse to try and change the view on my phone. So like that is like literally a metaphor for what we're talking about. Like these beliefs, these conditioned responses can be so automatic, a bit like I've been conditioned to use this mouse all day and my hand literally goes to it when I need to actually consciously remember and rewire that I'm on my phone and the mouse is not going to work.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
In the moment examples.
Real life as it's happening.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a couple of like slightly more personal questions about your journey. And the first one I wanted to ask you was, what did your life feel like before you had your awakening? So pre the life that you have now, before things started to change for you, what did that feel like? You touched on having that experience when you were 8 about saving your family, and that, you know, obviously was an amazing thing, but it was like totally almost as if it didn't happen. What did it feel like to not be able to be open about those things? And then how did that sort of impact the rest of your life up until your awakening?
Oh, these are great questions, Jenny. I'm loving these. Amazing questions. So it was deep misalignment, but I didn't know it was misalignment. But the ways it was coming out for me was in health issues. So I used to get tonsillitis like 3 or 4 times a year. I had chronic IBS symptoms. I was like deeply unhappy as well. Like I used to cry most days because like in my corporate job, I didn't want to go to work because I felt so deeply misaligned, but I thought that was normal. Yeah. I thought everybody like was counting down the days till Friday. I thought everyone cried on a Sunday night because they hated it so much and they didn't want to go to work on a Monday. So yeah, it came out like physically for me as health conditions. Then, and this is where like this tipping point for me was when I trained to be a mindfulness teacher, because we had to like deeply go through an 8-week program ourselves, like, and then learn how to teach it. So I went like deeply through mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And as I was like building this mindfulness muscle, I was like, oh, like this makes me feel like this, and this makes me feel like this. And I was working in London, and this was before like the spiritual awakening kind of came on, but it was like an awakening. And it was suddenly just this huge wake up call. how certain things made me feel really good, certain things made me not feel so good. And what I was actually feeling a lot of the time was everyone else's emotions. So I would get off the train in London and it would be like I could feel everything.
Yeah.
And I used to think it was mine. So I used to be like, oh, must be some trauma. Feeling that I'm getting triggered again. Why am I getting triggered again? Like, what is it about London? And it wasn't. It was literally, I was just feeling everything. And then I was putting myself in these like super busy places where I was feeling everything. So it started as physical, and then I was like really seeing it and feeling it in my reality. We've had an offer. Charlie has said, can they sing to lift the mood? Is the mood not lifted already? Maybe Jenny needs to sing.
Oh no, I don't fancy singing right now. Thank you very much.
So I hope that answers the question. Oh, Jenny, you're back. Your screen went off and on again.
No, I'm good. And that it does answer the question. And actually it leads me on to the next thing that I want to ask you, which is, you've talked before about going along to attend a positive psychology event, which I think it was the first training event for positive psychology in the UK when it first came out, and that sort of having a profound impact on essentially the direction of the rest of your life. Would you say that positive psychology event that you went to was the start of the awakening for you?
Yeah, it really was. By the way, like, I'm sure we'll come on to boundaries, but somebody just posted an inappropriate comment, so I've just blocked them from this live. That's what I was ending. I would say that was the profound shift for me. So I'd studied psychology, and that was very like traditional. It was very traditional. It was quite, medicine, cognitive, evolutionary focused. And then suddenly this new modality came in that was about focusing on like who you are and what your strengths are. And that was my first window into mindfulness. And it was soon after that I went and did my mindfulness teacher training. But the biggest like aha moment for me was the first day of the course, where the training was actually like near Liberties of London. So those that know London, like, it's super central. It was like literally right central London, just off like Oxford Street, Regent Street. And I felt this inner calm wash over me that I'd never felt in my life. And it made no sense because I was in like the busiest part of London, but I felt this inner calm. So I was like, okay, this stuff must be magical because I've never felt like this ever. And now I'm feeling like this in central London, and I'm super sensitive to like everything that is going on. So that then made me kind of really wake up and pay attention to it. And I remember phoning my mum like the first night. I was back in my hotel and I was crying. She was like, oh no, you're crying. Do you need to come home? And I was like, no, like, I'm crying because I can tell this is like the first day to transforming my whole life. And from that moment, it was like, wow, I can actually choose to be happy. I can actually change my life. Like, I don't have to be who I thought I was. I don't have to live this life that I don't have to be unhappy. I can actually choose and make those changes in my brain. And that's ultimately what led to me doing my TEDx, because it was like, this stuff is transformational. Yeah. You can change your life. So yeah, a real pivotal moment for me. So good spot with noticing that and me talking about that, Jenny. Thank you.
It's amazing though the way you say that, in terms of it became you became consciously aware of the fact that you could choose to be happy and you could choose to make changes. And I think that's so interesting in a world where we're constantly being bombarded with bad news and the prices of everything are going up and nobody's got any money, and like all this sort of narrative that we're constantly bombarded with in life about how it's miserable and awful, and how do you expect me to be happy when I'm having to work 46 hours a week and bring up 5 children and we don't have enough, it's like that constant, what do you mean I can choose to be happy? I live in miserable circumstances. And actually it's so much deeper than that, in terms of, it's not about, okay, I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll have £1 million and all my problems will be solved. It's reprogramming what's happening up here to spot those little tiny glimmers of gratitude and happiness, and where things have gone right. And it's, you're reprogramming your brain to pick up on those little good moments so that your brain goes, oh, hold on a minute, we want to be picking up on the good moments. Let's find more of the good moments. And then before you know it, you have suddenly got aspiration, you have energy, you have the will to want a better life. And, you know, that it's a real snowball effect.
Love that. Yeah, I was actually, funnily enough, I was just my quantum alignment course. I was just re-recording one of the modules on positive psychology this morning. So that's a really timely question. And then like sometimes, like I know this stuff, like it's deeply ingrained, but sometimes I have to consciously even remember it myself. And I was like watching back the video that I was recreating, and I was like, I'm even grateful for this cup of tea right now. And I was like, oh, I really am grateful for this cup of tea right now. And like, it is just magical. Like I've had times where I've been sat in traffic, and I'm quite like, driving is the one thing that does actually quite stress me. And then I'll go, okay, I'm in traffic, I'm feeling a little bit stressed right now, right? And then I remember, and it comes in, and I go, gratitude practice. And instead of like the 3 I recommend, I'll make myself do 10. So I'm like, 10 gratitudes, go. And I know I can do 10 because I was speaking at this conference in, I think it was end of 2018, and there was a guy in the audience, and I said, you've got 2 minutes and I want a gratitude rampage. And it's a competition, who can think of the most. And this guy in 2 minutes came up with 70 things he was grateful for. He was literally like listing them all off. And I was like, wow, okay, if he can think of 70 in quick succession, I can think of 10 in the car easily. You know, and sometimes it's like, I'm so grateful that I have a car, that I drive this car, I have freedom. I'm so grateful that I have this cup of tea. And then other times it might be like, it might be bigger things, like I'm so grateful for this holiday, I'm so grateful for this money. But, you know, it can be big or small. It doesn't have to be. Like you say, like we can always find things to be grateful for around us. I did have somebody once at a workshop that I ran. She worked for the police. So again, she's probably really bombarded with like threats all the time, like threat brain, you know, caveman brain. And she couldn't think of like even one thing that she was grateful for. And she was wearing this lovely scarf. And I was like, well, what about this gorgeous scarf that you're wearing? And she was like, oh yeah, like it was like her brain just couldn't, because she'd been so bombarded with negativity throughout her whole career. She was so programmed, and we see this a lot in like finance type roles or risk type roles, where people are so programmed to look for the detail and look for the risk. And those people are incredible at spreadsheets. I am not. You know, there is a place for that, but when we are so conditioned to spot mistakes, to spot errors, to, you know, reconcile accounts, which finance was something that I did early on in my career. We just have to remember to flip it to like, what are we grateful for, just to balance that out. I don't know why I've started talking about finance. Just gone off on a tangent.
Because we're surrounded by abundance, Gemma. That's why
I'm talking about finance, exactly.
And then I think the last question that I wrote down before we got started is a 2-parter. It's, when did you discover your autism? And how did that contribute to you being able to be authentic and in alignment?
Oh, another great question. Okay, so, excuse me, I should have got some water before we started. Okay, so I have always known I was sensitive. Like apparently my mum said I used to shut myself in my room after school and I just used to say, I've had too much people time, Mum, I need to be on my own. So I was already kind of, you know, doing what I needed at that moment in time, until that was kind of conditioned out of me by school and corporate world and things like that. And I think for me, the pivotal moment was lockdown. Because I felt so amazing. Wasn't lockdown the best? Yeah. I felt so amazing in lockdown, like not having to be around people, not having to go anywhere or do anything. My business was flourishing, my energy was flourishing. I just felt absolutely amazing. And that's when I started to like really redesign my life, so that I set the boundaries in place that the world set for me. And of course, like I still do things if that's a yes in my body. I will still, you know, go to events, go to things, go to shops. Like I do still do that, only when that is a hell yes for me. But I say a lot of no's now, and it's like, okay, you felt amazing in lockdown, so what can I create that's a boundary to feel that way? And this was when this started to come in, this awareness. And what was the second pivotal moment was coming out of lockdown and going to a wedding where it was a crazy wedding anyway. There was I don't know what words I'm allowed to say on here, but let's say people were having drinks and people were having more than drinks at this wedding, and it was getting completely out of control. Let's say people were having they were having sherbet dib dabs at this wedding, and I started to feel really unsafe. And by about 4 hours of being around this utter chaos, it was like a beautiful ceremony, and then it was just like this free-for-all sherbet fest. And I started to feel really unsafe, really out of control, and like I needed to leave. And I'd been in this, I noticed that after about 4 hours, I reached a point of like tolerance. And I couldn't leave. So I was sat like waiting for the food to come. The food was delayed. I couldn't leave. I started to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Thankfully, I knew to take myself out. So I took myself out. I sat in the car for a bit. But it actually didn't help, because I still, it's like anywhere, it's like literally, it's like, where is the fire exit? Like how I felt was that there was a fire and I needed to escape. That is how I felt. Even though there wasn't a literal fire, there was like an energetic fire, because I was literally feeling everyone's stuff that was going on for them. And I went to see a therapist after that experience and said, I must have some awful trauma, because I could not handle this wedding. I reached a point, I got into I was like hysterically crying all the way home, because that's the way I kind of released the energy. And she said to me, like I'd asked for RTT, rapid transformational therapy. I was like, I must have something subconscious going on here. And she stopped me. She refunded me the money. And she said, I am not going to do RTT on you today, because yes, you might have some subconscious patterns, but this sounds like autism. You literally were at a wedding where there was sherbets and the whole thing was out of control. You felt unsafe. That is totally normal. You had a 4-hour window. I think you need to look at an autism diagnosis. And I was like, yeah, it's not the first time I've thought for this. So it actually took that, up to that point, I was like, oh, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Up to that point, I was like, it doesn't really matter. I know I'm sensitive. And then it was like, no, I actually really need this validation. And I always had like PTSD after that wedding. It was like, if I was invited to another wedding, I was like, no, I can't go. Like, I don't want to go to a wedding. I don't want to go to a festival. I don't go anywhere where there's lots of people. So I knew I had to do something with it. And that then led me to the diagnosis, which was super interesting in itself, because the psychiatrist said, because I'd spent so many years on personal development, like it was really hard to unpick like whether I was autistic or not, because I was so highly masked and I'd found like so many strategies around it already.
You knew how to perform.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that was an interesting. Did that answer the question? I can't remember.
It did. The second part of it was sort of, how does that then play into you being able to be fully authentic and in alignment now that you have that knowledge?
So it's been extremely validating in terms of like looking back over my life and going, that was because I was autistic. So I think I was carrying a lot of shame where I'd like not behaved normally in certain situations, times where I'd, cut off friendships that I found overwhelming, even leaving my marriage, to be honest. I was carrying like all this shame, and having that diagnosis was validating, because it was like, well, that was just autism, that was just autism, that was just autism. Therefore, I have nothing to be shameful about, and I don't have to keep healing what I think is trauma, because it's literally just overwhelm. And it is my sensitive gifts. It is actually my psychic gifts as well, which is why my brain is structured in this way. So, it really helped me to just accept who I was, and like have that conversation with my family as well, and say like, this is why like these things happened and why I was a certain way. It just made me kind of not be so obsessed. I mean, I still do a lot of like healing and shadow work on any like repeated patterns, but it's helped me kind of not be so obsessed with like trying to constantly fix myself, and just be like, okay, this is who I am. and that's who I'm going to be. And actually my sensitivity is my superpower. I know some people hate that, but I love that term because like I do genuinely believe that it is. So it's really helped me lean into like who I am rather than constantly trying to fix it.
Yeah.
The dog is snoring. That was not me. You heard that?
I believe you. No, I mean, that is fascinating, and it takes me back to a video actually that you stitched with a lady whose name I can't remember, but she's a doctor, and she was talking about that the idea of autistic people, and that, you know, the level of sensitivity that many of us have in terms of picking up on subconscious things that are happening in the environment, and that, you know, that when you are picking up on other people's energies and not understanding sort of why you're feeling that way, being aware of the fact that you have that extra sensitivity and accounting for it can really help us understand why we feel the way we feel in lots of different situations in a way that isn't really explained by conventional means, if you know what I mean.
I love that. It's really holistic. That was what I loved about the lady's video, was that like holistic approach. Like what we are feeling is like energetic, emotional, physical, like it's all the things. And the standard approach to neurodiversity is just like almost biological, emotional, like brain based, whereas actually it is that energy part as well. So yeah, I really love that. That was why I stitched that, because I was like, oh, someone is talking about the link between autism and psychic gifts. Like that is exactly what it is. Like that, literally, me being autistic was what actually saved my family. And that is not spoken about enough, that interplay. Like, and something that I saw, I'd love to know your opinion on this as well, Jenny. Something that I saw is that neurodivergent people are beings of the future. Like we are here to lead humanity into a new way of being in the world, and we are here to be light beings and like to anchor in light. So we have to take care of ourselves so much more because we are like these beings of the future. And this is why a lot of us experience, like I shared at the start of this, I've experienced a lot of like health issues earlier on in my journey, because like it's like we're not designed to live like in the matrix and just purely as human 3D beings. We are designed to, in that 3D vessel, be those light beings, and we are beings of the future. So like if we are denying that huge aspect of who we are, we're not actually here for the fullness of life. What do you feel about that, Jenny?
No, I agree. And I think, you know, because so many of us experience the world in a different way to our neurotypical counterparts, if you like, you know, I like the question why, and I often get into trouble for asking the question why, or for asking for more detail about something. I know that's quite a common autistic experience, certainly, because I want to know the detail behind why things are happening, and I struggle to do things for the sake of doing them, because that's the way it's always done, because that's the way it is, because that's how the system's set up. Well, the system's set up in a way that doesn't support everybody, so why are we still doing it that way? Why don't we try this? And it's having that bigger perspective to be able to say, oh, wait a minute, just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean to say we always have to do it that way. And so we are the rule breakers. I mean, conversely, because obviously I love a rule, but you know, we're the pattern breakers, and we are opening people's minds to other possibilities of ways of seeing things and doing things. And I find that really fascinating. I had this conversation with my husband the other day. We were going on the train on the way into London. We're talking about something to do with disability and accommodating for people's needs. And it's the idea that, you know, if we have signs that are in Braille, and we have, you know, that train station, you have the textured tiles on the floor so that blind people can feel when they're getting to the edge of the tracks. We have things on the walls that are in Braille. I don't know why I'm thinking particularly about blind accommodations at this point, but that's where we are. And it, you know, it's the idea that like, but not everybody's not blind, so why do we have these things? And it's like, it's to support the people that do have those needs. That won't be all of us, but in supporting them, we're supporting everybody, because we're being inclusive, and that's the idea about being inclusive and helping people to feel comfortable in the world. And we are, as neurodivergent people, we're challenging the baseline of comfort and expectation. And I think that can only help the world grow and develop in terms of who we are as a human race, and the places that we are prepared to go in our spiritual development.
I love that. I totally agree. And I'm also somebody that wants to break the rules, but also loves the rules, like quite likes having a structure to follow. So yeah, I hear that totally. And have you heard of systems thinking? So it sounds like what you're describing there is systems thinking.
Go on, what's that?
So it's all about, this was a concept I learned in corporate, but I really liked it. It's all about like how you look at things as like a whole system, and you ask why, and this is where like the 5 whys comes from. Okay. So if you can ask why 5 times and you get back to like a purpose, it's going to help someone, then it's something worth doing. So for example, years ago in my corporate job, this was like the example I used. I'm sure I can think of a better example, it might just come in, but we used to have to correct electronic messages that came through in the system from people's insurance. And it seemed like a really pointless task, and everyone hated it, and everyone would have to do that task every morning. But when you asked why 5 times, where you actually got to was by correcting that message, that client's policy would go onto the system. If they got stopped by the police at the side of the road or they had an accident, someone could help them. So you got, through asking those 5 whys, you got to a person that needed help from a person in the moment from that pointless task you were doing. Anything where you ask the 5 whys and you don't get within 5 whys, you don't get to actually like helping someone, it would go. And that would kind of be the means. So, you know, we could do this with anything, but that is effectively what you're saying there, Jenny, is like, as neurodivergent people, we can see that bigger picture, we can see the system as a whole, and we can ask the whys and we can challenge. And this is also, I think, what makes us great coaches, because we can see those things that others can't. We have those like super, you know, intuitive senses to, it might be that what our clients are saying and what we're feeling isn't quite in alignment. And then that's the opportunity to say, is that really, you know, is that really, can you go a little deeper on that? Because I'm actually feeling this. So yeah, it really is a gift, isn't it? I don't know, I went off on a tangent. I think we were still on the same topic. So many tangents today, Jenny, but I'm sure it's all useful.
No, it's all for the good. It's all for the good. Those were all the questions that were burning in my mind, if you like, before we got started in terms of authenticity and alignment. Was there anything else that you wanted to share while we are still live?
I would love to ask you a question, Jenny, if that's okay.
Please do.
So I love this. So the purpose of us doing this was that like you've stitched with a few of my videos and you've asked me questions. So I would love to know, like, what is it that made you feel called to reach out to me and to feel, I don't really know what the question is. How do I word it? Like what called you to stitch with my videos and feel that you resonated with me? Like what was it? I'd just love to know. Just curious question.
That's a good question. I'm going to need to think about that for a second, because you came across my FYP, I don't know when now, within the last year or so, and you were almost like the bridge between 2 worlds in terms of your place that you have had in corporate and the life that you had before your awakening and sort of delving deeper into your gifts, and then having that ability to have those gifts and that you've worked on it, and you know, you've delved so much deeper into that part of yourself. You were like, for me, you were like the bridge of you satisfied my healthy skeptic. I do have a healthy skeptic when it comes to spiritual things, despite experiences that I've had for myself. And so you satisfied my healthy skeptic, and you talk a lot about science and the science behind positive psychology. So healthy skeptic was happy about that. But the curious spiritual side of me was also, the interest was piqued in terms of some of the things that you were saying about how your sort of life's journey has gone, and some of the experiences and developments that you've had over time. And the more that I came across your content, the more that resonated with you being someone that I needed to sort of be in the orbit of, in terms of furthering my own connection with my higher self and my spirit and my spiritual development, and getting back into alignment with my spiritual path, if you like, and finding some greater self-acceptance with that part of myself. Because you know, even sitting here and having these conversations with you now and being in the membership, I still do have sometimes a little voice in the back of my head that goes, is it though? Is that really? Is it? What's the evidence of that? Are you just making it up in your head, Jenny? And so working with you and being in your membership is helping to appease that skeptic side, and therefore allow the authentic connection to come in for me.
I love the answer. Thank you, Jenny. I love the bridge between worlds. I was like, oh yeah, the bridge. The training that I did in the Authentic Abundance event, I literally had a bridge, didn't I? And I was like, this is how you get from here to here. So yeah, I love that. Beautiful answer. And I think that you made a really important part about the skeptic. I think so many of us feel that. And again, a lot of that is conditioning, and a lot of that is like, I need to see to know. And this is where like a lot of the research, like Joe Dispenza and like Lynn McTaggart and a lot of those people research in the quantum field has really helped me kind of go, oh wow, they did this experiment and this happens. Okay, this stuff does actually really work, rather than like, am I going completely crazy? Like, do I actually need sectioning? Am I like totally psychotic? So I think for a lot of us, that feeling of, is this real? Like, I think that's really, really, really common. And we've just had like such magic, haven't we? So that session I was running where like this rainbow came across the screen, and I think you manifested some money like straight after the session. And like, even to the day, I'm like, is this okay? It's real. Like, magic is real. And then I did another, was it last week? I did a training, and you'd spotted that my teeth suddenly started glowing. Yeah, just like all these crazy things happen that it's like when you can't explain it any longer, it's like, well, I have no other explanation other than this is magic. It just comes over time, doesn't it? It just comes over time, like you say, like comes over time, comes with the evidence, so this is the thing, right? Like, has anyone watching, let me know, have you read the book The Field by Lynn McTaggart? So there is so much evidence out there that was done in the 1970s that actually evidences a lot of this stuff is real, but it has been so hidden by the scientific community. So if anyone is kind of questioning that and is a bit geeky like me and wants to kind of hop in, the book The Field is really good, like anything by Joe Dispenza. I don't personally recommend the meditations, which is another conversation, but Joe's books, definitely, do delve into that.
It's fascinating. I haven't seen a lot of Joe Dispenza stuff or Lynn McTaggart, but it's interesting in terms of sort of the opening up. When I was signed off with work 3 years ago and I started listening to audiobooks, I think the first thing that I listened to was a Derren Brown mini-series on, I think it was Audible, and it was about your brain and how your brain works and the psychology behind how your brain works, which was interesting. And I quite like Derren Brown. I quite like his sort of take on, manipulation's the wrong word, but how he uses his special spicy skills to work with people. And then the next one was a book it was called Please Yourself, and it was about people pleasing. And sort of from there on in, I then sort of started to listen to other audiobooks. I can't remember for the life of me now. Manifestations, and Abraham Hicks, got into a little bit more of the work of Abraham Hicks, and started to sort of delve into that more manifesting spiritual world. And it sort of slowly ticked on from there. And it's amazing how things sort of just drip feed in at just about the right intensity for you. It's almost like there's a plan out there and there's people looking out for you. But you never get given more than you're able to sort of cope with in the moment, no matter how you feel about that in the moment. So it's like the awakening sometimes can happen gradually over time, and before you realise it, you're like, oh, that's been coming for quite some time and I didn't notice all these little like coincidences, or well, there aren't really coincidences in life, are there? But all these little synchronicities that have popped up over the last few years.
I love that. The dog is snoring again. I promise it isn't me.
Really, really comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, Jenny. I love the Abraham Hicks stuff as well. I love the just the ask and it is given concept and the like emotional guidance scale thing. The only bit I feel is missing in there is like the shadow side. Like I feel like sometimes there is a space for shadow expression. It's like raise our vibration, choose the next feel good emotion, and at the same time like what shadow expression is coming out. That work is really powerful. Like I've actually played the money game before. That's in the back of the book, and it's just really, really powerful and fun as well. So we're coming to the end of today's conversation, and I've enjoyed so much being asked questions by Jenny. So feel free to do this anytime, because it's really good. And I'm glad I managed to actually think of the answers. Can you imagine if you asked me something really difficult and I was like, I just kind of stared into space for 5 minutes. That would have been an awkward live, wouldn't it? So thank you so much, Jenny. Is there anything else you'd like to ask or share before we end today's session?
No, I think that's it really. It's been lovely to be able to just have a conversation. And although, I did sit literally 10 minutes before we came on live, and those were the questions that came to me. But it's really fascinating to hear a little bit more about how your world has developed in terms of where you are now. And even when you post sort of on this day from a couple of years ago or last year, you can still feel the development and the growth that's happened even since that point. So it's just lovely to be a part of your world. So thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. It's lovely to be part of your world as well, Jenny.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much. Let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely, please, let's do.
Amazing. Oh, thanks, Jenny, and thanks everyone watching. And we're sending you, I was going to say we are sending you, I'm sending you holiday. Jenny might not choose to. Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks everyone watching. Bye for now.